Hi folks, in this video I am going to return back to one of my most favourite lines to make, which is Masters of the Universe. As you can see, I have printed out Evil-Lyn, one of the Skeletor's evil warriors. Now this is by LA Figures, who did the sculpt. I have printed this in 1/8 scale, so I upscaled the files a little bit. It's pretty much hollow, apart from things like the head, the hands, the staff, that kind of thing. What else can I say? It went together fairly well. I had one issue, which was where the cape joins the chest, and I did have to, in the end, fill that up with milliput, as the gap was really quite big. So I have had to glue in the cape to the body there. So it's not the end of the world. It's not the best job in the world where I've sort of tried to seal that gap, but once it's been painted, I don't think you're really going to notice much. Beyond that, it's a really nice sculpt as always. The base is quite interesting. It's this time around, so most of the bases from LA Figures are kind of the same for the Masters range, but this time around we have actually got some skulls running along the back of the base there. So really keen to get going with this one. Anything else I need to say? I don't think so. The cape came out pretty well. No one likes printing capes. I printed it out in one solid piece. And yeah, it came out fine. As I say, the only issue was then the gap in between the model, but I've taken care of all of that. So everything else I can break down again. Nothing is glued together other than the cape to the body. So let's get cracking. I'm going to grab some paints and some brushes and we will get some paint on her. Now, because I'm a bit of a messy painter, truth be told, I'm going to actually start with the darkest colour, which is black for the cloak. This way, if I do any sort of overspill, it'll be much easier to clean up later on as colours are applied. Last thing I want to do is all the flesh colour, for example, and then accidentally get black on it. Okay, so with the cloak all painted in black, next thing I'm going to do is a dry brush using some blue violet to go all over the cape, paying particular attention to the edges to give it a nice purple edge highlight. So with all dry brushing, you want to get yourself a nice dry brush, preferably, or at least a brush with nice stiff bristles, and you want to just basically dip it into your paint and then essentially take off most of the paint with a kitchen towel until you get it to a stage where it's just leaving behind just a sort of a faint trace of paint. You can always test it on your thumb. Once you're happy, away you go. So with this cloak, what I'm going to do, as I say, is concentrate it pretty much over most of it, but then go a bit harder on the edges. So I'm going to start on the folds here, start building out a line, and then, for example, on the edges, you just start going down, sweeping motions. You should start to see, if I can get it in focus, should start to see the sort of purple edge highlight going along. So I'm going to go all over the cloak like this. I say this is quite a good sculpt because it's got lots of raised edges to it, so I can easily pick those out, and it just gives that little bit of definition and a lot more interest. And after all that dry brushing, this is the final result. Okay, let's carry on. Next thing I want to tackle is the initial base colour for the skin. Now, I've tried a lot of different skin tone paints that are out there over the years, and I've always found them to be just too thin, so I've decided I have to make up my own concoction. So to do that, I mix essentially equal parts of Chikero Orange with Deck Tan. Now, by mixing these two together, eventually you'll get kind of a pinkish peach type colour. Now, the beauty of this is because the two paints I mixed together have quite high pigment values in them, they're essentially like kind of Citadel's kind of base paints, if you like. This colour is actually quite strong despite it being very light, so it should go onto the model quite easily, just in probably one coat, possibly two. You just need to remember to add a little bit of water as well, because again, these paints are quite thick that you're mixing together. Okay, so once you're happy with that flesh tone mix, it's just a case of putting it all over the parts that need it. After two thin coats of that colour I mixed up, this is the skin tone that I'm left with, so this gives me a good foundation now to build upon. Now, Evil-Lyn has generally been depicted with having quite a yellow skin, certainly in the cartoon and the original action figure. So what I've done, I've mixed up about 50-50, actually no, probably about 30% Cassandora yellow, probably 60% water. So I thinned it down quite a bit, and I'm going to run this all over the skin. Now what it's going to do is basically tint the skin a little bit and also go into the recesses. So what I'm going to do is slap it all on, but I'm going to then take a sponge and get most of it off. So I don't want it to sort of stain and leave behind any sort of mess. It's really a case of just trying to tint the tone. So once I've got the whole piece covered, happy with that, take a makeup sponge and just start to dab off the excess. So I'm going to repeat this process around all the skin. Now with that wash all dry, what I'm going to do is take some dark flesh, which is a sort of a very yellowy kind of skin tone, which is going to be perfect for this Evil-Lyn skin I'm trying to achieve. So just with normal dry brush, take off as much paint as needed. I'm just going to do dry brush all over all the skin. Okay, so after all that dry brushing, I'm pretty happy actually with the colours, how that's turned out. It's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is just expand on that a little bit. I'm going to take one of these Tamiya Weathering Master sets. Now, I'm quite new to playing around with one of these, but they are quite good. They're basically three different colour pastels. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the darker of the colour. I'm going to use probably a little bit of chestnut and a bit of the caramel. And what I'm going to do is basically take this little tool that comes with it, and I'm just going to essentially, where I've got sort of the creases and whatnot, I'm just going to rub a bit of this into those folds and then just blend it out a little bit just to kind of deepen those and give a little bit more colour. So I'm just going to bring out those kind of creases a little bit more, difference in texture, like so. Next up, I'm going to start painting in the clothes. I'm going to start with some Blue Violets by Vallejo. So I'm going to need to follow the reference material here, just to make sure that I get the purple in the right places on the costume. Essentially, sort of around the bottom part here, there's some on the chest and around the stomach. Okay, so with the purple applied, what I'm now going to do is the armour, and for that I'm going to use some Elven armour, which is a nice metallic blue, and this is basically going to go all over the pieces, that anything that isn't purple at this stage. So around the breastplate, there's also parts on the arm, cuffs like that, all need to be this colour. Okay, time to have a bit of a rethink. This paint just is not going on properly, this Elven armour. I don't know whether the paint itself just isn't particularly good or whether I've got a duff batch. but it's going on really, really thin and streaky, and it's not even drying particularly evenly. So I'm going to have to make my own colour. So what I'm going to do is mix up equal parts Runefang Steel and Macragge Blue. So you can see I've got the two colours on my palette here. I'm just going to mix these up. I'm going to make a metallic blue of my own design. Okay, let's test this out then. So you can see how streaky that elven armour was. Let's see how this goes down. Yeah, that's much better. It's not quite as bright as the elven armour was, not quite as metallic, but I think in a pinch it'll do. Okay, so that change plan of the blue is now finished, and I am actually much happier with that. I think the colour is actually probably a bit closer to the source material in the cartoon anyway. So next thing I'm going to do is get some Nuln Oil, and I'm just going to run this into the recesses of all the fabric that I've just laid down. Essentially just do a recess shade. Now for the sceptre, I'm going to keep things nice and simple. I'm just going to start off with a silver. I think I'm using gunmetal silver for this. And it's going to be all over the staff, handle, and the sort of claw type bits at the top here. That is then followed with an all over black wash of Nuln Oil. It is Runefang Steel next, and I'm just going to do a quick dry brush all over that silver now that the recesses have been shaded in, just to bring back a little bit of sparkle. And then finally for the sort of magic orb itself, I'm going to take a try using this night scale. So this is essentially a metallic black. So I haven't used this before, so I'll be interested to see how well this goes down. It's pretty thin. So yeah, that's not bad. It's pretty sparkly. So it's looking okay. So it's probably going to take a couple of passes to get a nice solid coat. So I'll do that and we'll see how it looks when I come back. So I ended up doing, I think, 3 coats of that sparkly black, and I'm pretty happy with that. It's a pretty cool effect there. Yeah, probably going to try and look for excuses to use this paint again in the future. Moving on to the boots, I'm going to do an all-over coat using some of that blue violet from Vallejo. I'm going to take some burgundy next, and this is going to be painting in the soles of the boots. Next up, I'm going to take some Druchii Violet, which is a nice deep purple wash. I'm going to put this all over the boot from top to bottom. Once that wash has dried, I'm now going to just go back in and do a all over dry brush using that original blue violet purple. Okay, time to finish up the head. Now I'm going to do the helmet first. So what I'm going to do is take some metallic purple, a royal purple by Army Painter, and I'm going to paint in the frill. So I originally did it just the same colour as the clothing, that same purple, but I think it'll look better as a metallic. Next up is straightforward black for the rest of the helmet. Okay, while I had that black out, I just quickly put in the eyebrows and around the eyes. Now, I haven't done a perfect job, but I'll come back and tidy that up in a second. Before I do that, I'm going to just paint in the lips, and for that I'm going to use some of this corn red, which is a nice dark red. Next up is the white of the eyes, and for that I am just using some Dectan. Okay, next up I'm going to do some eyeshadow, and for this I'm just going to take some soft black pastel and I'm just going to work this in to the tops of the eyes. Okay, so after that eyeshadow has been applied, it's time to paint in the eyes. So for this I'm going to use some olive green. I'm not actually sure what colour eyes Evil-Lyn has, but I'm going with green. So just two big circles in centre of each eye. Okay, so it's the black pupils next, and then a dot of white in each eye, just to give that slight reflection. And with the eyes completed, that is the face all finished. Okay, on to the base. Now, for this, I want to do an effect to make it kind of look like the Snake Mountain type of colours that we see. So obviously that sort of purple up to pink colour. So to achieve that, I'm going to do a lot of dry brushing. I'm going to start off with some Nagaroth Night, which is a deep purple, moving up to a burgundy of black bar burgundy. Then I'm going to go to the pinks with Screamer Pink, then Pink Horror, and then finally actually a bit of grey, Administratum Grey, just as the final touch. So this is going to be dry brushing each of these colours in turn, and that's going to be for all the rocks on the base. Now the spikes and the skulls, obviously I'll do those in a different colour. Okay, so Nagaroth Night to start. And this initial dry brush, I'm going to go down fairly heavy, just to sort of build up that initial base layer. It is burgundy next. Now, as I go up each of these colours, I'm going to do a little bit less paint applied each time round. Next up is Screamer Pink. Now, because I primed this in black, you'll see that the dry brushing essentially means that all the shadows and creases and crevices and all that type of thing are going to be darker in the shadows, which is exactly what we want. So just a added bit of depth there, just for the price of using a black primer. Next up, Pink Horror. And then finally, just a bit of a sprinkling of Administratum Grey. Next up, I'm going to tackle all these little spikes, and for that I'm going to do another dry brush, this time using some Lupical Green. I'm going to follow that with a second dry brush using some Wire Flesh. Okay, so it is on to the skulls next that line around the base. Now you could paint them properly, by which I mean, neatly paint them, base colour, and then, washes over it and highlights over that. Or you could do it quick and dirty, which is what I think I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to go with dry brushing over the whole thing. Make use of the shadows of the black already in there and build up from that. So with that said, the first thing I'm going to use is some Sandry dust. And just do a dry brush across each one of the skulls, trying my best not to hit all the stonework that I've already done. And after that last bit of dry brushing across the skulls there, I'm going to call the base done. It's a bit of a quick and dirty job across those skulls, but I think that should be fine, given that, to be honest, most of it is going to be hidden as the base is going to be turned that way anyhow. So with the base all complete, I can now put the model together and come back and show you the final reveal. And that is a wrap on Evil-Lyn. So another Masters Universe character added to the collection. In fact, I'll bring out a couple of the other bad guys just to give you a little bit of a comparison. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate that. And if you would consider subscribing, liking, all that type of jazz, it probably helps the channel. I don't know if it really does or not. But it's nice just to get these videos out there and to sort of expand the little 3D printing and painting community. So, till the next one, take care everyone, I'll see you soon.